Hi, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Have you had an opportunity to start to think about regaining your own sense of footing, your sense of self, and a sense of direction of where to go from here? That is my biggest hope. Rediscovering you and who God has called you to be, who He has created you to be, the gifts and the talents and the things that He's given you to offer to the world, to rediscover those and learn to live in the joy of walking in that, no matter what the circumstances are around you. I know I gave you some homework to start journaling things about the kind of person that you want to be known for, what you want your story to tell. I think I also had you journal about what kind of boundaries you might need to put into place and how to have some good effective consequences for those boundaries as a way to start to make your space be safer, more peaceful, you more able to contribute to the world what God has given you to contribute to the world. How are you doing with that? Use everything as an opportunity to build some community, especially so that you don't feel so alone, but also to help feed your spirit so that you can pour out of yourself to the world around you in the way that God created you to do. Today, what I want to talk about is how to let go of what others think about you. I think one of the biggest obstacles I run into is, especially if you're coming out of a really legalistic church community or a very strict family who demands that you be a certain way or they cut you off, that type of thing, it makes it really difficult for you to do what you're really being called to do by God because you're so distracted by what other people will think. This is true where your image is everything, that being a Christian, honoring God, is about following these rules, a bunch of do's and don'ts. It's about being this image, holiness and righteousness and perfection, which is not really Christianity at all. I'm also talking about that context where you have family members who are saying, no, you should stay with him because that's the only way you honor God, or that, you're not being submissive enough, or you could just do more. You could be a better housekeeper, or you could be sexier, or you could do more to meet his needs so that he's not angry at you. And they imply that if you were to separate or put some boundaries in place, that you're actually defying them by putting some boundaries in place. And it can put a lot of pressure on you to stay where you are without taking the steps you need to take in order to really build some safe space. The thought here is letting go of what others think of you. A good way to think of that is the bigger picture here is that God created you who you are. You have your own gifts, your own talents, your own abilities, your own heart, your own thinking, your own things to offer to the world. And if you are in a relationship that is not letting any of that happen, God is calling you to a place where you can use those gifts to further His name, to honor Him, to walk in the strength and the power of the Lord. And you can't do any of those things well if you care what everyone else thinks about it. There's a verse I quote a lot when I get caught up myself in worrying about what other people think. The verse is 1 Peter 2:15, and it says, "It's God's will that you continue to do good, so that you silence the ignorant talk of foolish men." And the context of that verse is about submitting to authority, but it works well to help you stay focused in walking out what God has put before you to do. So it's God's will that you continue to do good. Well, doing good is whatever that thing is that He has put before you to do, to care for, to steward, to manage, whatever your giftedness is, do it. Put your energy into doing that. And He will silence the ignorant talk of foolish men. So that's the battle cry. But how to do that? I have a few steps that will help. The first one is to narrow your focus. Find out what is truth. What's really happening here? Is this really abuse? Is this honoring God? Is this letting me be who God has called me to be? Is it using my gifts and talents? Or is it squashing them and hiding them? Because that doesn't honor God. So, what is truth here? Some of that means that you have to dig deep to really know what God is saying of you, who He has made you to be, called you to be, what He's put before you to do. This involves spending some time on your knees before Him, asking Him to reveal truth to you. What's really happening? What is true? A good way to decipher through what is true is to also look at that flip side of what's deceptive, what's toxic. Because if you can identify what is deceptive and toxic, you can eliminate that stuff and it'll help you get to what is true. Another good question to ask is, what do you think God is asking you to do? How do you discern what it is He's asking you? It's not just about finding your happiness. It's not just about running away from the harm. It's not even just about trying to find your way through here based on this gut feeling of this isn't the life I want something different. What is God really asking of you? Sometimes it's not the most obvious thing. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing. But when you can latch on to what that is, it helps you to be confident about taking the next steps that move you towards stewarding your gifts in a way that honor God and bring the type of harvest that honors God and spreads His glory and His name. And you get to be a part of that. So, what do you think God is asking you to do? And how do you know what is true and not just a feeling of what you think you might like to make you happy? Another good question to ask is, what are the elements of your own heart that God is trying to shape? There's so much about being in this situation with an abusive relationship that will shape your heart in ways that nothing else can. You are forced to reckon with being Jesus in the face of not being loved in return. Walking that out, outside of my home, I have friends everywhere, and I can be kind, loving, gracious Jesus to anyone. And if I don't like them, I don't have to be around them. I can still come home. But when it's my spouse and he's being toxic and destructive and mean, to choose to be Jesus to him is a huge, hard step. But there's no other realm of my life where I would be forced to reckon with the things that I have to reckon with in that space of how do I be Jesus to him, not a doormat, not just run over, not enabling sin, because Jesus didn't do any of those things, but loving him well with no expectation of return. So that's a good way to see what kind of things of your own heart that God is trying to hone and shape. For example, bitterness, anger, hardness of heart, selfishness, pride. Those are usually things that God is trying to address of your own heart, even as you're walking through this really difficult space. It's worth it to pay attention to those things, because even as God grows you and protects you and defends you and walks you through this or out of it or whatever, you're still doing the work of your own heart that he's asking you to do. And that's going to be moving you even more and more into a place of peace and safety because you're just living your life abandoned to God. Another good question is, what has God put before you to do today? What is that next right step? Put your energy into that because that's what he's given you to do. It might just be taking care of your children, doing your job well, or whatever projects you're involved in, people that you're caring for. Do it well. Put your heart into that because they're there because God has given them to you to care for. Whatever it is that God has put before you to do this day, put your energy into that. That is something you control. You control you and what you do with what God has given you to do. Narrow your focus to that today It eliminates a lot of the anxiety and concern about tomorrow, because when you're in this kind of chaotic space, there's nothing about tomorrow that you can count on or control. You can't even put all your ducks in a row because you have no control over that. You do have control over this moment and what you do right now. So if you learn to focus on that and then leave tomorrow just resting in the fact that God has the last say in everything and that He is totally in control of everything. And even if He totally comes in and changes the whole landscape tomorrow, however He does that, He's still in control. That helps your heart to rest and gives you more energy to do today what He's given you to do today. So that's my sermon for today, my insight, my hope for today. For homework, what I want you to do is to sit down and evaluate, how are you letting the opinion of others keep you from putting up healthy boundaries? How are you letting their opinion keep you from living who God has called you to be? How are you letting their opinion block God from moving you out of this space when He's trying to move you out of this space? Journal about that a little bit. I always think it helps to write it down because you have to process it in complete sentences, full words, and it helps your brain to process it. Write it down and maybe you'll start to see a trend. You'll see some things that make it really clear where you need to just not be listening to the lies people are speaking over you, not be listening to the ways that they are trying to manipulate and control your life so that they look good. Look for ways to find the truth about how to honor God in this space, whatever it looks like, that's not based on what your church teaches or what other people say, but is based on what you know of God and where you know God is calling you to live and to step, what He's calling you to do or to care for or steward or manage. Spend some time asking God to reveal to you what is true. So use this as an opportunity to get before God and see what He is asking of you for that clarity of how to let go of caring so much what others think about you, because at the end of the day, you stand before God alone, not with any of them there to defend you. There comes a point where you have to walk out your life according to what God is calling you to do, not according to what they are calling you to do, because that's what you're going to answer for. So think about that. Let that be a motivation, a catalyst for you to start to, again, think about those things that God has given you, gifted you with to do. And then go live. Live well, even in the middle of these circumstances, regardless of whether or not they change. I hope you've been encouraged. Until next time, have a good day. Bye.